So we're in Dublin. We're at the RDS, which is, I think, for me, the main conference venue in Dublin. This was actually where Web Summit used to run their conferences until 2015. They had like 40,000 people here, and when they left, SaaStock's first conference was in 2016, and it also kind of felt quite interesting that not necessarily us filling their shoes, but we came into the same venue, much smaller event, but also big ambitions as well. Pretty much everything that we do at SaaStock is all about getting people together, but the right people together. SaaS founders, where we really focus, SaaS founders on their journey to 10 million in revenue. And I think you just can't beat that importance of getting together, learning from one another, supporting each other, learning from those a few steps ahead of each other. Right now, the markets, it's so uncertain, right? And it's like, are we in a recession? Is the recession coming? I would say that there is a large majority of SaaStock attendees that are quite unsure of really kind of what do they need to do. Do they need to start making cuts? Do they need to be aggressive in the market to win? Is now the time? This year is especially exciting as we're speaking to a handful of world-class GTM leaders that are really sharing their playbook on how, as a founder, you can really look at the next kind of 12 months and make sure that you can implement some of the best practices on that playbook to help your SaaS business get through it. Right, let's go check it out.
I'm Ashley Kramer. I'm Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at GitLab.
My name is Gidi Pridor. My friends call me Gidi. I am the CMO and Chief Storyteller, as I like to call myself, for Workvivo.
I'm Trip Brockway, Global VP of Sales at Paddle.
My name is Tim Solo. I am Chief Marketing Officer at Ahrefs.
I'm Alina Vandenberg. I'm co-founder, co-CEO, and most recently acting CMO at Gidi Pridor.
I'm Andy White. I'm CEO, founder of a company called Medic.
I'm Kevin Dorsey. Everybody calls me KD, unless I get out of line, then call me Kevin. I'm the practice lead at Winning by Design.
My name is Dimitar Stanimirov. I'm the General Manager for EMEA at Crossbeam.
In the last 6 months, the changes that I've seen in the market are people are much more cost conscious, of course, and so customers are looking for ways to gain efficiency but keep their productivity up to remain competitive in the market, and that's the major shift that we've seen given the economic climate that we're in.
So there's been a lot of changes, right? There's changes in the macro level, which are leading to changes in the micro. Funding is tougher, outreach is harder, budgets are tighter, right? Everyone is in this kind of waited out stage, which makes things obviously a lot harder to manage in terms of hitting revenue targets, keeping people motivated, keeping people inspired. And so I think the biggest is everyone seems just waiting, right? VCs are waiting to give money, companies are waiting to make hires, companies are waiting to buy things, sales leaders are waiting to make changes. So it's like this weird, everyone's just kind of holding on to see what happens, and it's creating a very interesting dynamic out there.
And with that has come the massive withdrawal of venture capital. So companies are finding it difficult to get funded, fewer deals are being made. And for those that actually are getting funded, the good old mantra of growth at all costs has now been replaced with efficiency. So you have to grow, but you have to do it in an efficient and a more predictable and scalable way.
So we talked a lot about growth with our customers 12 months ago. And I think now the conversation has shifted much more about cost and efficiency. And so I think that sales teams, sales leaders, go-to-market teams need to think about how they adjust to that.
Now, on the one hand, with the recession, you want to be recession-proof. You need to, as I said before, become very tactical and optimize for the demand capture, the best they could squeeze out of PPC on Google, right? On the other hand, it's more urgent than ever before to understand your story and elevate its criticality so the pitch sounds better. So SDRs, even if they're not the best in the market, you take the most out of them. And that story, elevated, lets you squeeze everyone and everything that you have in order to really hit the nail on the head and create some demand. If you don't have that, you're at the mercy of the market. Could be a year, could be two, you might not survive. You have to be selling something critical that resonates.
100% efficiency. So what we're all doing as companies, whether the company's doing well or whether the company's struggling, you're going to learn how to gain massive efficiencies, and you're going to gain how to use data as your key indicators, along with a little bit of human intuition layered in. And even when the world starts booming again, keeping those efficiencies are just going to make the company even stronger. And so that's the number one that I would say. Everything we're going to learn about how to make ourselves continue to thrive as a company through a recession should continue going when the world corrects.
I'm a big believer in the idea that deals and sort of sales are won and lost in the first two conversations. I think a lot of folks think that deals are won and lost at the end, and I think that's just a natural outcome of running a good process. So spent a lot of time thinking about how to train and enable the team to be world-class at a first and second conversation. You could think of a first conversation as sort of like discovery, but it's that entry conversation to understand, is it really worth anyone's time to sort of continue on here? That needs to be both information gathering, obviously, for the salesperson, but if you sort of fail to emotionally engage the person on the other end, and you're just asking a ton of interrogative questions, and they feel like it's a Spanish Inquisition, I don't think they're going to come back for a second call that often, right? When time is short. So making sure that you're building some emotional engagement on that first conversation. Second one, really being able to connect the solution that you provide, the problems you solve, back to the things that matter to the customer. So ideally, that conversation is a bit bespoke, right? It's not the same every time unless we're selling something very, very simple.
This might be your 100th time running the demo. It's the first time this individual is hearing it. And you need to approach every call with the mindset, I'm gonna make this the best call I've ever had. One, for your personal benefit, right? It's gonna add up for you, but two, you owe it to the prospect, right? Like, they deserve your best. They deserve you to show up and give them everything you can to make things better. You owe it to them.
As boring and beaten as it sounds, talking to customers and being in the places where they are hanging out. So if there are some communities where your target audience is hanging out, you should be there. If there are some conferences where your target audience is hanging out, you should be there.
When someone is ghosting a deal, typically a couple of things happen. They don't manage to get buy-in from their internal team. They have a lot more worries than the project that was first priority maybe a week ago, because they're afraid that they may not have a job anymore, that they have to lay off their team, that they might have to make some miracles happen in some parts of their business. And as a salesperson, it's really good to keep that in mind, to keep those things that might affect the person that you have to help. And even when you're having a discovery call, even when you're having a demo, understand the circumstances that might happen in the next week or within your cycle, and see if you can help.
The CEO or whoever's making the decisions needs to rally everyone around the same metric, right? So it's like, hey, revenue is the focus, because that's where sales and marketing get in trouble. Marketing cares about leads, because that's what they're being told, generate leads. Sales cares about revenue, so they're like, forget all these bad leads, we're trying to generate revenue. If everyone's rallied around the same metric of like, hey, marketing, you're being held to revenue, sales, you're being held to revenue, that's the first step. You can't have competing like goals between the two orgs.
Time to close, because that's the one in a down market that's going to give you so much insight of where things are going wrong. Because if you think about it, if you start saying, well, how much, total pipeline, conversion rate, yeah, an event has to happen for you to be able to make sense of that data. But if you just leave an opportunity open, you're not going to get any information from it. So if you really start to focus on time to close and really put some thought behind that being a really powerful indicator of your performance, and start clearing out opportunities that clearly aren't qualified, all the other data points are going to become enriched. You're going to be able to get so much more value from them, and you're going to be able to tell the real opportunities from the duds and double down on the real ones, and free up the time to focus on finding new opportunities with the ones that aren't good.
Now is not the time to spend a lot of money on big bets and new flashy branding. I mean, branding is still important, but now is the time to turn marketing more into an art. More into a science over an art. So now is the time to really use data as indicators. Our job in marketing is to provide that pipeline for sales. And so finding the ways using data-driven insights and using the indicators that you have are really, really important right now. The fun part of marketing is often the art, and we still include that, but we really want to make sure everything we're doing is continuing to provide sales with what they need to close those deals.
And when situations like this arise, it takes vision. It takes like a leap of faith, understanding what's going on and gambling, taking an educated bet on where we want to go. In our case, in Workvivo, it was clear because we are trying to elevate people's employee experience to improve the workplace, and the workplace got completely rewired. And nobody knows what the solution, but everybody has the problem. So we knew that we're either jumping on that boat and leading it, or we're not relevant at all. It was like a situation of like own it or ceasing to exist, I think, over time.
Let's say I'm not meeting my quota and I'm really struggling and I want to get better at my discovery skills, or I want to get better at my closing skills, and all of a sudden recession hits and I get less pipeline and I get people that are ghosting. It's super demotivating. So it just adds to the stress. What happens is that in general, as human beings, we find growth in the most challenging situations. We find the monsters inside of us to bring us back to above water level when things are tough. And sometimes we find the most amazing, not monsters, but heroes inside of us to save us. And that's when you realize what you really stand for, and that's when the strength comes to you to do things that you didn't think that are possible. It's hard to do it alone though. You have to have people around you that can see the things in you that you might not see.
You know, I'm a big believer in the majority of folks being set up to win. And that may mean that if leads are down, if close rate is down, you actually need to shrink the team. And I think a little bit of proactivity there can actually go a long way to helping avert a toxic culture. If you have a bunch of salespeople not hitting quota, things can get toxic very fast. And so you're better off kind of being proactive about that. And also that allows you to concentrate leads with top performers, which might be necessary in this kind of environment.
Best case scenario, if you are the first one to change the market, so you don't need to react, you act preemptively. So you see the change in the market and you're the first one to react to this, rather than all the companies have made the change and you're the one behind and now you need to react.
You can't just bet on one idea and you can't just do one thing. You have to be constantly trialing and constantly testing alternative ways to bring customers in and interested in what you have to sell.
Start to think not just about the top of the funnel and about what opportunities we should go after, but the opportunities we have, how are we optimizing to make sure we make the absolute most of those opportunities.
You essentially want to have 3 core questions. Why change? Why change now? And the only last thing that you ask is why us? Yeah, you need to basically have established that you need to change, and you need to change now. And I think, again, with everything happening in the broader economy right now, it's a good time to change.
What we talked about a lot with my team when things got tough was better or bitter. We can come out of this better because we really buckled down and we really focused and we really worked on our craft, or we can get bitter and just complain about everything, right? And we did talk about this. Like, so when things get good again, are we gonna be better or are we gonna be the same? Because if we aren't better when things get better, it means we're not great sales people, right? If we get better during this, when things get better, then our close rate should be 40% instead of 20%. Our deal size should be bigger, because if we could sell through this, we could sell through good times, right? So again, I think that comes down from leadership of like addressing the how.
This recession is going to throw different challenges at different companies. There isn't one textbook of how to solve this, but if there is one thing, like in any challenge in the world, sports, you name it, you need a strong team that is aligned, connected, and believes. If you could get that, that would take you there. And it's never been more important than now.
Dropbox, Box, Spotify, Airbnb, some of the biggest winners in SaaS basically started during the last recession. So again, not only you can build the successful company, I think you can build a super successful company.
A lot of the best companies have been built during recessions, either by people that lost their jobs and wanted to fix something, or companies that started to build it and just had to struggle a lot more. So when they suddenly got the resources, when the recession was over, they exploded. Because when the terms are harder, the best people need to bring their A game.
Now is the time for people to be creative, and now is the time for people to think differently about problems that can be solved for all of the customers that don't know what's happening out there. So my response to that is, now is the time to start a company.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a quote, y'all can keep this in or not, but it said, hard times make hard people. Hard people make good times. Good times make weak people. Weak people make hard times. Right? And I do believe in that, right? If we come through this better, because this was hard, oh boy, these things get better, right? Like afterwards. So you can build a great company, but it's gonna take the right type of people. Not everyone is built for tough times. They're not. You have to rally people around who can get through this, who's bought into it and who believes. Oh man, then when things get better, game over, right? I think a lot of big companies were built during recessions, and I think it was because, one, they took advantage of an opportunity, but two, they built the core group of people as tough people. And when you have a tough core, game over. You can do whatever you want.